Okay, I did some data collection on the Esports World Cup, SF6 matches, and I'm here to report my findings. Woo. This is an extension of the video I did several months ago where I measured a bunch of SF6 games and SF5 high-level tournament matches to see how certain stats differed on average between the two games. So first I recorded separate hits from the winning player of a round. By separate hits, I mean separate sources of tactile damage, not including things that are difficult to quantify like chip damage or poison damage, not counting combo resets that are literally guaranteed, such as when a player is in burnout and in the corner and has no super and has no way to avoid a guaranteed stun. If a trade happens, that counts as a hit for both players. If a combo happens, that's one hit. If a random jab clips a hurt box and leads to nothing, still a separate hit. In my previous video on the subject, I calculated an average of 7.36 separate hits to win a round of Street Fighter V, and an average of 6.429 for Street Fighter VI. In that video, I said that the SF6 stat was as high as it was because the game was still relatively new and players were still suboptimal, and a lot of the matches that I collected from, they were the highest level matches that were available to find, top 8s of majors, things like that, but even still, because the game was new, a lot of mistakes, a lot of drops, a lot of scrambles, etc., that led to a bunch of unnecessary extra hits per round. And I was right. Now, for the EWC, the average hits to win a round has lowered down to 6.01, was the final answer. It's unlikely that as an average, it will ever reach a point where it's like around mid-5 or below, but still, almost 6 flat is really fucking low, right? It's a lower average number of hits per round by a significant margin than SF5, which was at like 7.3, 7.4. Definitely much fewer hits per round than SF4, which averaged, like 9 hits per round from the winning player. So the average round time that I calculated at the EWC was 39 seconds per round. On average, the players who won the round spent about an average of 9.85 bars of drive gauge. This was very inconsistent. Plenty of players spend like 7 bars in a single round, and plenty of players spent like 13 bars in a single round. Unsurprisingly, drive gauge spent was usually correlated almost entirely to the round timer and the playstyle. The few rounds that went down to the last 10 seconds, each player spent close to 18 bars of drive gauge in that round. If we consider 2 bars of drive gauge to be equal to 1 EX move, and thus roughly equal to 1 bar of meter as it was in SF5, and we can look at the meter comparison. Honestly, 2 bars of drive gauge is actually probably worth more than 1 bar of meter in SF5, since in SF5 you either get EX moves or you get a super, but in this game you get both. So, anyways, in SF5, players spent an average of close to 2 bars per round. So 9.25 drive gauge bars in this game, divide by 2, 4.625, so you're getting more than double the meter per round than was spent in SF5. I was more interested in measuring supers this time around, and I've really opened my eyes in recent months to how much supers are wasted in most games, most matches in this game. Usually with players, they hold on to their 3 bars until like the final round. Maybe they spend it, maybe they just don't use it at all before they win or they lose. So with the highest level of play in the world at the EWC, players generated an average of about 2 bars of super per round, okay? Rounds that by the clock went to like 60 seconds, they usually generated like 2.5 or almost 3 bars, or actually 3 bars, even in the first round. Most rounds, especially most first rounds, were like around 40 seconds or so, and they generate like 1 to 1.5 to 2 bars of super. Average of a little bit lower than 2 bars of super generated per round. And on average, across all of the rounds, across both players spent an average of 0.827 bars of super per round. So the top players are literally spending less than half of their usable super gauge every single game. Less than half. About half or less than half. And that's not even with me removing supers that were spent on final combos that were not even necessary. Like, for instance, if a player kills in the final round with a combo that they do into level 3, but they could have killed with just a normal combo that didn't spend any super or spent at least less super, I still recorded that as them spending 3 bars because it would really slow down my data collection process to try to figure out every single time that a super spending was not necessary to get the kill, etc. But the point is that 0.84 bars of super that they spend, it's actually even lower than that per round because a lot of them spent level 3 on the final combo after they had already basically gotten the kill anyways, just because. Because players are constantly holding on to their level 3s. They don't want to spend it early because most of the level 3s that give them shit Oki. So they would rather take Oki, and then they just save it for the last hit, and half the time they don't even get to use it on the last hit. Or not, it doesn't even add anything. So yeah. Anyways, there are lots of matches where one or both players never even spent any of their bar or only spent half of their total bar super that they generated or less. So much super gauge being completely wasted every single match. I've been a long-standing advocate for the position that the place where players have the most room to currently improve and optimize in a tactile way is with their supers. Even getting half of the value that you want to get from a super, but if you're still using your fucking bar, is better than the current status quo where you're like half of your resources are just down the toilet. Anyways, other things that I noticed while measuring a bunch of shit for hundreds of matches for hours and hours of my life I'll never get back. Hundreds of rounds, not matches. The weirdest players, in terms of their statistics, are clearly Angry Bird and Noah the Prodigy. I was already planning on making a video about Noah's playstyle anyways, but I didn't realize how weird Angry Bird's playstyle is, too. Angry Bird in particular has very alarming stats. He has, by far and away, the longest rounds by timer of any player in the EWC. Which is ironic because in SF5, I knew him. My first thought when I see reference to Angry Bird is he had the shortest average round times of any player in that 1 year Capcom Cup, where like Justin Wong had the longest average round times. Now it's totally flipped around. He has become Justin Wong. Angry Bird also spends, by far and away, the least amount of drive gauge per second of each round. And in fact, a lot of the time he just sits there in mid-screen with full drive gauge, and he has no intention of spending it on anything anytime soon. His playstyle is concerned with control and like risk management, and he puts no priority into maximizing his like resource generation. He lands the most throws out of any player in the EWC. He lands the largest number of separate hits per round of any player. And yeah, he just fucking sits there and is content to do very little. But those are the interesting parts of my findings. Make of it what you will. That's about it. See ya.